Hi, I'm Ems, aka on Dark and Wings. In this video, I'll be taking a look at Montana Gold spray paints. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. It all helps my small channel grow and gives me the motivation to keep making these videos. Montana Gold are quite a famous spray paint company. They mainly specialise in graffiti and more canvas and traditional art. However, I have been seeing more 3D printing artists who do large-scale models using these types of spray paints, and I've printed out a couple larger things myself, so I thought it would be cool for that. But I thought it would be interesting to see whether or not these paints would be suited for smaller wargaming style miniatures. These paints range from around about the £7 to £10 mark, and there are a bunch of different types and effect paints. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. I went with 3 of these paints, so I went with the gold chrome, which looks really fancy, and I also went with the copper chrome one. I got the marble one as well, however, this wasn't the marble effects paint, which I thought it was, and when I went back to the store again, Hobbycraft, they didn't actually have the marble effect one, so I'll have to get that again at a later date, but I still want to try this out as well. I might as well for the sake of the video. I thought it would be worthwhile to compare these to one of my favourite spray painting brands specifically for miniatures, and that is Colourforge. I do think these paints are some of the best, if not the best, on the market at the moment in terms of cost effectiveness and the way that they go into the miniatures. I will be comparing Colourforge metallics with the Montana Gold metallics and also the Montana Marble, which is like a white primer, to the Colourforge's white primer. To make this test fair, I am going to be using some Stormcast Eternal miniatures, and I've primed these in black first for the metallic parts, and then the other miniatures will just be put over the top of some grey plastic for the white. The Stormcast was sent to me by my friend Chris, who's awesome. He now and again sends me miniatures he doesn't need, and I repurpose them, and they're great for me to practice painting on and trying things out like this. Okay, so now to the good stuff. Sorry, the waffle's out of the way. So this is the first colour up. This is the gold chrome from Montana Gold, and it looks immense. It looks really, really cool. It looks like it's actually been dipped in gold. And also with the copper as well, this looks like it's been dipped in some sort of copper. You do get a really nice coat with this. It covers the model super nicely and evenly. It's quite a thick paint and it's glossy, but it's not completely obscured the details on the miniatures like I was expecting it to. It's actually still quite readable as a model. This paint is really intense though when it comes out. It has a really big mist that comes out of it, and you have to be quite careful and restrained with how you spray it on miniatures, otherwise you could coat it far too much. There is some slight bits which have been obscured, such as some really fine recessed details. I don't think it matters too much on these types of miniatures, but I could see it being a problem if you were doing smaller, true scale 28mm type of things, but it looks quite good on this bulky armour. And now here we have the Colourforge Gold. The spray paint has covered the model quite nicely. The details aren't obscured at all. The only problem I do have is that it's a lot more dull than the Montana Gold spray paints, and also I find the coverage of the metallic pigments is a little bit more uneven compared to the Montana Gold stuff. If you're looking more towards display painting and higher end painting levels, I probably wouldn't use the Montana Gold. Like I said, it is thicker and looks a little bit more unnatural. However, I think it would be cool to do as like a funky army project. You could batch paint a load of models like this, such as Stormcasts and Custodials, and maybe even some Space Marines, and you could get some quite cool results which would look great on the tabletop. And I could also see these paints being really great to use in terrain or like larger models such as tanks. Next up I have the Montana Gold Marble, and I've used this as a primer, so this went straight over the top of grey plastic. And to be honest, I think it looks quite good from a distance, doesn't it? It's not obscured the details too much. And this is the Colourforge white primer, and as you can see, these are quite similar at first glance. Again, the Montana Gold is thicker, it's glossier, However, it does cover really nicely and evenly, and I could imagine this being cool if you're not a fan of painting, and you could batch paint and use this and make some white armor. The colour forge paint is a lot thinner, the details aren't obscured, and it covers quite well. This is my favourite primer to actually go to when I'm not using an airbrush. Just as one last thing, I wanted to see how paints would go over the top of the Montana Gold spray paints. As miniature painters, we obviously use a lot of water-based acrylic paints, so there's no point in us using Montana Gold if, paint isn't going to go over the top of it. So I've just got a red contrast paint here. I was expecting this to not go on perhaps at all, but when I put it on the model, it actually covered quite well. It did spider off slightly, so it didn't cover probably the Colour Forge one does, but it still looks pretty good at a distance, and if you're after like a glossy finish, I could see it being cool to use as a primer. But again, I probably wouldn't recommend this stuff if you're into more high-end display painting. The surface tension of it is very different to more acrylic-based primers. It didn't turn out half bad actually, it covered pretty well. There's still some bits where it's separated slightly and I had to put some more paint on it. However, it's not a complete disaster, and it could be interesting if it's sort of the desired effect that you wanted with the glossy finish. Just as one last additional thing, I wanted to see how a wash would go over the top of this, especially with the gold one, because I think I like the gold chrome effects the most, and it would be interesting to batch paint some custodials or some stormcast in the gold or the copper colours for like a quick cool looking effect. In a similar way to how I put the contrast paint on top of the white, this has a similar effect, so it still goes over the top of it, however it does separate slightly, so you do have to play around with it more. I think perhaps an oil or an enamel wash would look even better over the top of the chrome colours, as it has a glossier finish and oil paints tend to take to that type of surface. So in conclusion, do I think the Montana Golds are useful to you as a wargaming miniature painter? I personally wouldn't want to use these as a primer. I do think they are interesting though, especially those metallics I used. But I do think you could get some cool effects and results if you were batch painting an army which had quite a lot of large armor panels on them, like I said, custodials and space marines and stormcasts, and perhaps even some vehicles and terrain. If you do happen to try some of these, please do experiment with them first before destroying your army with them if you don't like it. I do want to get some more Montana Gold paints in the future, especially the marble effects paints, to try out on some bases, as well as the rust colours. If you would like to support my channel, you can donate in the link in the description below, or join my Patreon, otherwise please share this video. Thank you for watching. As always, remember to enjoy your hobbies for yourself, respect that people enjoy them in their own ways, and at the end of the day, they're just war dollies. I'll see you in the next one.